All right. Yeah, 3 minutes past 6 a.m. here in Malaysia, 3 minutes past midnight in the Netherlands, and 3 minutes past 10 in Fiji. So I think we get started. We might see some other people coming in as we go, and we'll admit it. So welcome everybody. This is Pier Andrea Pirani here. As I said, I'm calling in from Kota Kinabalu, Malaysia, and I'm working with CTA and the other organizers for this series of webinars we're doing today and tomorrow on mVAM. Before we start with the program, just briefly on the platform that we're using. So we're using Zoom, as of course you know, and I'm sure most of you are now familiar with Zoom due to this Zoom pandemic that we've been experiencing over the past few months. Just to let you know that we, beside the video, we try to make use of all the features in the platform. So we're going to have some presentation. We're going to use the chat a lot. We're going to do polls and group works. And for the group work, we're going to also use Google Slides. So this is just a heads up, details in due time. Some technical tips, as I said, and as I see, you're already behaving very well. Everybody is on mute. In case you'll forget your microphone open after you speak, I'm going to mute yourself to make sure we get good quality of the call. So don't take it personal if at a certain point I close your mic. Of course, I won't do it while you're talking. Let's use the chat, please, to comment or to share ideas or to ask questions as we go along during the presentation. So let's use the chat as a supplementary channel to communicate and to have the conversation during the webinar. And for any reason you cannot see or hear, well, sometimes just closing the program and restarting works well. Make sure also your computer, other programs are closed, programs that may consume bandwidth. Video is optional, don't need to keep it on. We understand there are bandwidth constraints, so feel free to turn it on or off as you want. And we're recording this video for our own records to share it with participants that cannot join us today. I see some activity in the chat, so if you haven't done it yet, please introduce yourself to the rest of the team. And we're a small group here, so hopefully we'll be able to hear from everybody as we go along. But as I said, we're going to use all the all the different Zoom options. And at this point, I would like to launch a quick poll. And you should now be seeing it. So I'm going to launch it, and it should display in the middle of the screen. So we're asking you, since we're talking about market information prices, market information and prices today. So we thought to have just a quick icebreaker and poll you to see if you know what was the price of taro in June 2019, so pre-COVID, and what's the price of taro now. So can you see the poll if you can see the poll in the main area, please vote. You have to choose one option for question 1 and one option for question 2, and then we see if you have it right. So let's give ourselves a few seconds to complete the poll. You can submit only after you have answered both questions. We got 6% of the votes now. I would like to maybe get to 70%, a couple more votes before we close it. Yeah, all right. So I'm gonna end the results now. And let's see, hopefully you didn't have time enough to check on the internet before choosing your answer. So what was the price in 2019? Here there is a split. As you can, I'm going to show, sorry, you should be able now to see the results. So there is a split, 2.44, and we're talking about Fiji, of course, and 2.14. And for the current price, 3.24. All right, so surprise, surprise. in 2019, the price was 244. So yeah, good. 6 of you got it right. But what's interesting is that according to our data in June 2020, the price per kg, it's actually 214. So it has decreased, it hasn't increased. So this was a bit tricky. I see most of you replied at 324. So no, actually the current price is 214. I see there is some activity in the chat. It's not very easy to see the chat when I'm screen sharing. So I know that Eleanor from WFP is keeping an eye on the chat. Feel free to keep engaging there. And as soon as I'll stop sharing the screen, I'll be able to see what's happening in there. Or please notify me of any issue that I should be aware of. Let me stop the results here of the poll. And let me go next. So I would like to ask Tamara Nicodeme from IFAD to come in with audio and video and to give us the official opening for this webinar. Tamara?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of World Food Programme and the International Fund for Agricultural Development and the Technical Center for Agriculture and Rural Cooperation, we would like to thank you for joining the market monitoring workshop today. The 3 organizations, WFP, IFAD and CTA, are working together to support multi-stakeholder efforts in developing a coordinated response to the COVID-19 pandemic, so as to contribute towards informed and evidence-based decision-making processes that minimize the longer-term negative repercussions on food systems and on people's livelihoods. This workshop aims at building partnerships and leveraging network across the Pacific to develop a better understanding of the COVID-19 impacts on livelihoods and markets across the region. Through your engagement today, we plan to identify relevant key informant groups to support market monitoring and data collection efforts to better understand the longer-term economic impacts of COVID-19. This would support collaborative efforts to collect market data from government representatives, farmers and their associations, community-based organizations, but also private agro-enterprises, non-governmental organizations and financiers. Following the WFP presentation on the Mobile Vulnerability Analysis and Mapping and Market Functionality Index, we would like to hear from all of you through these interactive sessions aimed at mapping out other ongoing market monitoring efforts undertaken across the Pacific, but also jointly identifying relevant data collection gaps and proposing solutions and relevant synergies moving forward. On behalf of the 3 organizations, WFP, CTA and IFAD, we wish you a fruitful session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tamara. And thanks indeed to the organizer for bringing this session together today. Tamara has already indicated what we are doing today and what we want to achieve. This is a quick overview of the program. As you can see, we're running about 10 minutes late, so we'll try to gain some minutes in the next segment. So right after my slide, we'll move on to Andre Martinez from WFP for sharing the presentation on mVAM, and followed by Q&A. We'll then break into small groups for an exercise. We have an assignment for you, so we'll make you work in about 20 minutes time, and then we'll go back in plenary looking at next steps and the closing. Just that you know that the program ends at 11:30, but we'll keep the room open for additional 30 minutes for informal networking, subsequent chatting, and yeah, a bit of connecting informally between participants. All right, so with this, I'm now going to stop sharing my screen, and I'll hand over to Andre Martinez from WFP. So Andre, he can share his screen. Just give me a second, Andre. setting the screen sharing. Yeah, you should be able to start sharing your screen now. Thanks, Andrea. The floor is yours. About, yeah,
Great.
15 minutes if we manage. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll do. Thank you, Pierre. Hello, everyone. Pleasure to be here with you today. I am presenting on mVAM. So just let me go over the broad overview. So I'll be providing an update on the Mobile Vulnerability Analysis and Mapping Initiative. As Pierre mentioned, also as Tamara mentioned, also on Market Functionality Index, and then a little bit on process and analysis of that specific market functionality tool. Then we'll break into a quick Q&A. So just a brief overview of mVAM. We're aiming to cover about 8 countries in the Pacific, including Fiji, Samoa, and as you can see, the rest at the top of the slide. We're focusing on 2 different streams of data collection. One is for food security and livelihoods, which we're basically leveraging call centers to do remote data collection. And that's a household level data collection to understand more about food consumption, coping strategies that households have taken on board due to the difficulty that COVID has caused many households throughout the Pacific. And we collect 400 observations rolling onwards for a number of various months. And what we're trying to do is have a national and regional snapshot of what's the situation is like at the country level. On the other side of the stream is the market monitoring, which is what we're here to meet about today. I'll discuss a little bit more about the findings from the food security and livelihoods household level call center interviews. But as mentioned today, we are wanting to engage with you and hopefully have some productive discussions around what solutions and what things we can do to enable market monitoring. And WFP, along with partners, will be basically displaying a potential solution or part of the solution to that. So why is mVAM useful for us? It allows us to collect data remotely. That means that we have security in terms of how the data is collected, particularly now with a pandemic or the risk of restarting a pandemic. It's flexible in terms of what questions can be included. There's usually a fairly high provider coverage in Fiji. For example, that's the case. So is the case in Tonga and Samoa, for example. In other countries, that's perhaps not the case, but it's still a very useful tool and approach for data collection. Call centers are widely available, as you may be aware. In terms of time, it's a big saver. It allows us to quickly collect information and save money on those collections as well, as it's cheaper than the logistical challenges that face-to-face data collection presents. And globally, in terms of trends, 2G coverage is quite high. And as I'm sure you're aware, with new tools like Zoom, there's also data collection tools that are available. They're free, they're open source, and so we are essentially mindful of this environment and leveraging this to our benefit. So we have finished round 1, Fiji data collection and analysis, and in measuring the deprivation, or in other words, the way in which households go without, right? The things that they lack in order to lead a healthy lifestyle. And we're looking at measurements, for example, of what deprivation looks like. So going without for the household, and found that 32% of households in rural areas, which is quite high, are experiencing this level of deprivation. So lack of access to health, for example, food insecurity, their living conditions. It's using all these different measures to discuss, to basically present what some of these deprivation looks like. And for urban, that looks a bit different, is at 22%. And when we asked households in Fiji whether they had seen reduced or no income, 57% of rural households said that they had seen reduced or no income, while 53% of urban households reported the same. So a very similar figure for the latter, for the change in income, and a fairly different figure for the deprivation along non-economic factors. Just quickly, the top concerns in Fiji: lack of work, increase of food prices, and food shortages. And here you can see someone responded at the bottom that they harvested chili for their farm. They have been selling it on the roadside to assist with the family needs and wants. So this is a way that they expressed themselves over the interview to say how they were managing the COVID-19 pandemic. So this was shared in your communications when we first sent out the email to allow you to sign in. But we're looking at proposing a solution from WFP side, but also hearing from you what solutions you may have in mind. For us, it would be ideal to engage in networks, which is what we're doing now. We essentially want either people to sign up or to be able to coordinate different networks, and we really want to hear from you how we could do that. Ideally, then what would follow would be some trainings, interview of networks or the key informants that we're wanting to reach. And ideally, where I think everyone can participate is the discussion of the results, the coordination that goes after that. And, it's basically a full circle that then restarts again. So I'm going to stop there real quick because there's a really short poll. So glad, Pierre, if you can pop that up and allow participants to read the question and answer some of the questions so we can see what your responses are.
Thanks, Andre. Yes, I've just launched the poll. So this poll has multiple questions, has 3 different questions. The first one: do you have solutions in mind for reaching marketplaces, such as street vendors, grocery stores, etc., with the MFI Market Functionality Index survey? The second question asks, what would be the best option for reaching markets? And you've got different options to choose from. And then the third one, it's about what can be done to support this initiative or to fill market gaps. You'll be able to submit your vote only after you make a choice in each of the questions. So please, I see some people have already responded. Let's give ourselves a few seconds and let's try to get everybody posting their vote. Quick consultation at the ministry, maybe 5 more seconds, and then we'll close the poll. Let's see if we get 1 or 2 more votes. All right, I'm ending the poll now. And I'm sharing the results. So Andre, several people, the great majority has already ideas in mind. So we look forward to hear them when we go into the group work. In terms of options for reaching markets, a mix and face-to-face interview, they come together at the same level. Online survey, not very popular for this group, it seems. And then the last question, what can be done, what DIGOs can do to support this initiative? It's indeed about coordinating networks for data collection. Anything surprising, Andre? Or anything you want to comment?
No, it's good to see that the online survey is not a hit, because it just shows that it probably doesn't even really apply. It's probably not a good way to collect information anyway, in this context. So, yeah.
All right. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I think yesterday we had a few people choosing this option, but yeah, not that many indeed. All right, I'm stopping sharing the results and over to you.
So why does WFP analyze market information? And we set out to understand, how households can achieve food security to meet and also to meet their essential needs. We want to also understand how to best intervene. So whether there's a program, a project, or an intervention that we can put together to respond to the situation and to again food security and essential needs are met. And we also want to understand how the local market can be strengthened. And that's important to bring up because as I'm sure everyone on this call would agree, is that markets play a pivotal role, a very important role in enhancing livelihoods and promoting food security and enabling households to meet their essential needs. So how does the market functionality come in to play for this? So essentially the market functionality index was designed to provide insights into the feasibility of market-based interventions. It allows us to see risks, potential areas for market strengthening initiatives. And WFP has been carrying out market assessments for a very long time. I work for the Vulnerability Analysis and Mapping Unit. It's a unit that's devoted to doing assessments and targeting and using information to inform our work. And the market assessments tend to be difficult to standardize, right? So we wanted to look for a measurement that could apply to many different places and that would help us understand how well markets were working or functioning. And to target the traders at the market. So let's just do a quick overview of the market functionality index. So at a glance, it's composed of 9 dimensions. So as you would agree, most of the things that you want to look for in terms of whether a market works or not have to do with assortment or the different types of available products, availability of those products. What is the price of the products available? Is the supply chain resilient? Is it a strong supply chain? To what level is there competition? Are there any issues regarding infrastructure, for example? What are the services like? What is the quality of the food and overall general access and protection, which has to do with an environment in which the market is in. And for the analysis, we look at market and trader level. We break it up into 3 categories, and that's for cereals, other food, and non-food items. We have 2 versions of the questionnaire. One is a reduced version that only has 10 questions, and one is a 27 original set of questions, and they're yes or no. So they're very simple to answer, and the questions are phrased in a very simple way. And the overall score is from 0 to 10, so it's easy to say and easy to understand. So 0 is low, 10 is high. 0 means the market's not working or functioning very well. 10 means the market is working very well. And the final aggregate score allows us to understand the overall situation. So just to give you an example of what the questions are, for that dimension number 2, availability, are there products that are currently scarce in your shop? And the answer is yes or no for non-food item, yes or no for food other than cereals, yes or no for cereal food. And the same answers apply to the question below. Are you afraid of running out of stocks within 1 week from now? And again, this allows us to measure the availability in the market. So that's just one dimension out of many. I'll run through the process of market monitoring and analysis. It first starts with a choice. Are you going to go face-to-face, or you use mobile technology to reach the traders and the market? And in terms of adapting the questionnaire, we can adapt it a little bit, but the core questions must remain the same in order for the measurement to work. We then decide the sampling strategy, or a strategy how to reach the people we want to interview. After data collection, the information is put into a data bridges application, which stores the information and automatically calculates the scores, and then automatically also visualizes the scores and the analysis online. And I can show you an example of that in a little bit. So what are the benefits of the market functionality index and this tool? Well, it's a simple tool, right? So it's a simple question, yes or no, divided by different types of trader. And the higher the score, the better the market's going to function. Also having this common scale, 0 to 10, allows us to compare markets inside a province, within a country, between countries. And the scores allow us to understand what potential intervention we could have. For WFP, that may be a cash-based transfer, a voucher, or in-kind support. In-kind being, potential food distribution. If the market's not functioning at all and it's 0, then our options are very limited, right? There's no market to go to, so the markets are not functioning how they should function. If it's in the middle, we have options. We could use a voucher, we could use cash. If it's a highly functioning market, then cash perhaps is the best option. And you can see that in the graph to your right, that basically shows you cash, voucher, in-kind, and the different types of market functionality rating. That's useful for WFP. And how do we know whether a market is functioning well or not? Well, we know that a good market that's functioning really well, that the buyers and the sellers are stable and they're predictable. The interaction between sellers and buyers is transparent. So if I buy something, I know how much it is. I know that it's similar price to another market nearby, and I feel comfortable and confident making that transaction. And the markets have sufficient supplies, and they also have regular and predictable supplies, and the prices tend to be predictable and stable. So I'm going to stop really quick here for a quick poll and allow Pierre to pop the poll up on Zoom. So glad if you can answer the questions that will pop up so that we can then discuss the responses.
Thanks, Andre. Yeah, we love polls. They're a great way, I think, to get a quick snapshot of what people think, what participants think, and where ideas are. So for this one, we're asking, what are some of your information priorities related to market monitoring? So there are a few listed here: market functionality, food and input prices, consumer demand, livelihoods, household level challenges or other. Please make your choice. And if you choose other, please let us know in the chat what other means. If you could describe that or unpack it a bit in the chat, that would be really, really helpful. I see votes are coming in. So let's give ourselves a few more seconds, and then we'll see where the priorities for this group are. All right. Well, 90% of votes, so I'm going to close the poll. 100%, everybody voted. Perfect. So I'm going to now end the poll, and I'm going to share the result in a second. Andre, what do you think is going to be the top priority? You're on mute?
I think prices is likely to be it.
Prices, huh?
Yeah.
And prices it is. Yeah, you should see the results now. So prices indeed, and then all the rest more or less the same: market functionality and consumer demand, livelihoods, house level challenge. I see one person selected other. Would be great if you could elaborate further in the chat to let us know what that other means. All right, I'm stopping sharing the results here, and over to you, Andre.
Thank you. And so in terms of sampling, there's different ways, of course, about going about identifying who we're going to interview and how many and how we go about it. But this is a solution that WFP is proposing. So in terms of that question, how many retailers should I interview? Well, just as a general rule of thumb, of course, the less interviews you make, the more likely your sample can be affected by a wide range of responses. Some may be very good, some may be very bad. So you may have an issue if you don't have enough responses to have a better picture for the overall situation. But in terms of a solution here, we would go with the best to pick a high number of markets with a lower number of traders per market. Another way of doing that is to say to pick a low number of markets, but within those low number of markets, we pick a high number of traders within that market. We also have to distinguish between local markets and bigger markets. And in terms of local markets, we're looking at a 25 to 50% coverage of those markets as being ideal. And if we're interviewing traders in small markets, we also should interview traders in bigger markets, particularly if those bigger markets supply the small local market. And we're also looking to interview a variety of traders. So ideally, we should replicate for 3 groups: cereals, food, and non-food item sellers. And in terms of how many traders and wholesalers to interview, ideally also anywhere between 7 and 12 per group. So the groups would be cereals, food, and non-food items. And in terms of wholesalers, we're looking to interview between 2 and 5. That would be an ideal setup for the market functionality index to work really well. I guess I should mention the other option would be if you're not going to go and figure out which traders and how many markets and local markets to interview, that if a country already has a database with the contact information for all the markets, then it would make sense to take that database and build a sampling approach based on that information so that we can contact all the right people. In absence of that, I think you have to then build your own plan and your own way of contacting the traders. And this is the analysis where we can aggregate the scores. So don't be intimidated by the chart to your left. It looks like a spider web. And at the outside of the spider web, that means things are really good. So you can see 10 is at the top at the edge and 0 is in the middle. And it breaks it down into A, assortment, B, availability, C, price, and so on and so forth. It has all the dimensions. So for A, assortment, you see that it's a wide range. The red box, the red rectangle there is quite wide. It goes from 10 to 0 because for green or e-voucher stores, assortment is not very good. For informal markets, it's okay. It's in the middle. It's somewhere around. It's right on 5, I think. And for formal markets, it is quite good. It's hovering a little bit below 9, so close to the outside of the spider web. That just basically gives you an idea that you can look at how well a market's functioning. You can split it by formal, informal. You could also split it by location. That's also fine. And this is just one way of aggregating the information. When we submit the responses to the online platform and the application the WFP has enabled, we can also create a dashboard. And this is what it could potentially look like. This is what it looks like for Nigeria. As you can see, there's a red to green, from red being 0 and green being 10. That means how well the market is functioning, whether it works well. There's also additional charts below, and there's also a map with locations. So with that, I conclude the presentation. And if you have had the chance to put a question in the comments in the chat, we can address that question there. Or if you feel like you want to raise your hand to ask a specific question, please feel free.
Thanks very much, Andre.
Thank you very much, Per. This is the group where several things are going on in Samoa. And then there's activity also in Tonga, and I think that was good, and that is presented. The group at the top, we put the duplication of efforts, the need for synergy, and that the information is actually being used to inform policy ministers up to cabinet level, VC actors. I think the last point which I would like to focus on is that in terms of collecting this data, you also need to make appointments with the farmers, etc. So time is a challenge, it is critical, and I think it goes back again to the issue that Alita was raising before about really having a finger on the pulse. So I think that this information is enough for the team to work with. So everything is user friendly. All that is existing, it is valued, it is being used. How do we build synergies? I think even with the Ministry of Agriculture, they've already started discussions with WFP. So that's it. I hope
Thanks,
I have
Judy.
represented the group well.
Thanks. If anybody else from the group wants to add anything, please log that into the chat. Jude, since you're already sharing the screen, do you mind flipping to the next slide? So we also see the output from the other group. You just go to slide 4. Yeah. Perfect. So we also have 5 items here. Need for a database, gap in infrastructure for managing information. Well, some are a bit longer. I wonder if somebody from this group, maybe Andrew or maybe somebody else that participated in this group wants just to highlight some of the essence of the conversation or something that stood out particularly.
Yeah, I'm happy to. We had a representative from Tonga that basically highlighted some of the challenges that they've had. It sounds like a massive amount of information that's being collected by the ministry and a real need for being able to organize the information and some gaps in terms of having a database. So yeah, we were mindful of that in terms of what WFP can support with as far as the market functionality index. We do have a database. Unfortunately, it's for processing of the market functionality index. But it was really interesting to hear what some of those challenges were at that country level. And Alita also had some really good feedback in terms of the need for collecting data over time, highlighted some of the issues in terms of respondent fatigue. So many people coming to survey and maybe vendors feeling like, well, what kind of support can be provided? And then a quick overview of what support in Alita's experience would make the most sense. We wanted to get into a bit more detail, but the time is limited. But yeah, it was a good discussion.
Yeah, as you know, time flies in breakout. It has it's all different dimension. Great. Anybody wants to add anything else from this group or also from the previous group? So this was actually group 1. You used group 3 slide, but that's all right. So from either group 1, now group 3 or group 2, anything else you want to add or any other ideas that you didn't manage to capture in the slides? All right. So that brings us to our last exercise for this webinar. So what I've been doing was to collect all these different outputs or the list of these different possible solutions and put them in a poll. So we want to finish the conversation with a poll. And can you maybe indicate from all these solutions that have been identified by the 2 groups, which would be the most important for you? You can choose 2 options. And maybe from the ministry, since you are a large team there, you can choose 3. But otherwise, please cast 2 votes. I give you some time because some are a bit long. I think probably the second one, gap in infrastructure, maybe we should formulate it as filling the gaps or making sure that the gaps are filled. But yeah, and Andre explained quite nicely and quite clearly what that means. So the data is there, but not the infrastructure to analyze it. So cast your votes. You've got 2 options that you can choose. And we've got a total of 10 here. Yeah, Aleta, I see your message. Thanks very much for being with us today and for all your input. We'll make sure you receive
Thanks. See ya.
the material. Thanks, have a good day there. All right, let's give ourselves a few more seconds to cast the votes here. I see votes are coming in. And like I said yesterday, in an ideal scenario, we would be able to unpack this a bit more, sort, bring together possible duplicate or solutions that go together. All right, so I'm now going to close the poll in 3, 2, 1. And the poll is now over. And I'll be sharing the results. So what do we get? Well, they're all close. We don't have that many people at the moment in the room. But the majority indicated support needed. CBT, organize a fee waiver to support markets, transport subsidiary. So what Andre was also mentioning just before in his comment after the work, after the group work. What else do we get? We get Ministry for Agriculture, the weekly basis main market on a roadside vendor, consumer price index for supermarket, and discussion is here with WFP. So we got quite a mix of solutions here that have been identified by this group. Andre, anything you want to comment on from these results? Any comment you have from these results? Anything surprising or particular interest for your work?
Yeah, for sure. I think it was good to have that discussion about potential solutions in terms of support. And yeah, I see that here the Ministry of Agriculture, Samoa Bureau of Statistics had mentioned main markets and roadside vendors and consumer price index from supermarkets. So yeah, it would be good to continue that discussion and understand some of the needs there as well. But overall, really, really interesting, a wide variety of different options to choose from. And I think some of them will require follow up and follow through to maybe understand a little bit more of the context and put together some report around it. But yeah, quite good.
Great. Thanks very much, Andre. I'm stopping the sharing of results here. And I'm also stopping share screen, and we're all back in video. Well, that we're getting close to the closing time, the official closing time of this workshop. So I think we have a lot of outputs and a lot of material that Andre and the rest of the WFP team can work with from this meeting and from the other 2 we had yesterday. From my side, like I said, we'll make sure that all the materials will be shared with the participants, presentation and recordings. And I would like to stop here myself and invite Judith or Tamara, maybe Judith, for some closing remarks.
Okay, so on behalf of the partners, I'd really like to thank all the participants for an exciting, thought-provoking session, which gives us a lot of food for thought in terms of how we can support this process going forward. What I really liked is that we have multiple data points. We are concerned about data quality, collection methods. We appreciate that we have to understand the context and that we are not only collecting data for our own interests, but also to inform policy and action. And I think that this is key. And another key take-home point is that we are willing to work together to not only improve how we collect data, but how we use it. So, on behalf of the partners, we want to thank all the participants from Samoa and Tonga for joining us and from the various organizations. We appreciate the interest and the effort, and we look forward to continuing to support you in making sure that market data is really useful in decision making, and especially in helping governments and partners respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. Enjoy the rest of your day for those in the Pacific. For those in Rome and the Netherlands, sleep tight. And I want to thank Per very much. Per, thank you very much for taking us through this process. It's been a pleasure working with you. I don't think anybody would have. And I see Andre raising his hand, and I want to thank Andre for all his technical guidance. I stop there and let Andre say what he has to say. Oh, I see Tamara raising her hand. Well, Pierre, is you to see all the hand raising. I have said the thank yous, and I really appreciated working with the team.
Thanks, Judy. Thanks very much. Tamara, Andra, any final comment before we stop the recording?
No, just applauding Judith's point.
Thanks, everybody. So at this point, the program is officially closed. I'm stopping the recording.